Next session, I will be joined by Ashlea Atigolo, who will be joining the main room in just a moment. Just while she is joining, I'm going to give you a bit of an intro to Ashlea. So, Ashlea Atigolo is an internationally recognized innovator in AI, fintech, and empathetic technology. She is co-founder of Inatigo, which is a Wealth Tech 100 listed AI firm. She's also a pioneer in agentic and conversational AI for financial services. Ashlea was named to the FinTech Power List and the UK's top 64 influential women in tech. She brings 15 plus years of experience across finance, technology, and digital transformation. She's also a sought-after speaker for blending the deep technical insight that she has with accessible and real-world strategies. So we're really lucky to be joined by her today, and we're in excellent hands for this session. Before I do hand over to Ashlea, just to remind you of our housekeeping points one more time, please remember that these are interactive sessions. Any comments that you have, any questions that you have, go ahead and pop those in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. Also remember that we are recording this session. It will be available on demand. You should get an email from CX Network about that following the close of the session. And finally, you can find Ashlea on LinkedIn via her Zoom profile in the resources box. So if you did want to connect with her or continue the conversation, then you can do so via LinkedIn. Ashlea, what a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining me.
We are going to start the presentation. Hello, and thank you so much. Hopefully this is working. You can see that I'm moving around now, trying to find everything in place. But hopefully this is all being seen by you guys now. Is that correct?
It is.
Okay, fantastic. So thank you so much, Chloe, for having me. We're going to dive deep into what we are now looking at, which is empathy and ethics and innovation, and how we should design with the customers in mind. So let's get started. So with the challenge of what we see now, what's going on with AI, is smart isn't enough. Fast answers and how AI works is not enough to feel that it's clients and customers are going to feel that that's good. Emotional connection is what people want. They want to understand, they want to be understood, and they want to feel that they've been understood. So understanding that in your CX is so important. So when you're looking at the leadership and looking at being in the CX industry, when we're thinking about AI agents, there are certain core things that we need to be thinking about. The emotional thread, shaping the customer journey and ensuring that that customer journey from the beginning when they start interacting, especially with an agent, so an AI agent, it needs to be shaped from the beginning. It needs to have that, because you are also a customer, how it feels. Because you know how it feels, you want to shape your customer experience on that thread as well to make sure that it's a good experience. So your actual leadership and your role now is expanded. It's expanded because we're in the age of AI. We're in the new world where people's experience expectations are going to be a lot more than what we would be used to with the normal chat box. So how we look at customer experience is transforming and accelerating. So your job roles, your experience your experience is going to change. The systems before were rigid. So what that means is when people experience AI agents or customer chatbots, they were very rigid in the sense of you could press the buttons and those buttons were very much logical or rule-based. So it meant that if a customer came in and said, I need to ask a specific question, that question may not have been asked because they weren't the ideal and they didn't have the perfect flow that was designed for that particular chatbot. So when a customer came in and would use a chatbot, we see all too well ourselves how much you will find that the agents themselves are not understanding fully what they need to do, how they need to act. And most of the time, they're so rigid that people weren't able to ask their own questions. That's changed now. We need to provide them with real answers. We need to be able to really get to the heart of where they are at the moment in their customer journey. Customers can always come in at different points in their journey. So it could be the case that they're exploring. It could be that they're confused, or they have emotions that aren't displaying that they're happy. And if those actual experiences that they're experiencing through the customer service agents or the AI chatbots, that determines how they're going to feel. When we're looking at AI chatbots and we're looking at what that means and the experience that people have, there's always times when it goes wrong, just like today when my screen hasn't been sharing and things are not working exactly. But what does that mean when you've got a customer coming in to your brand for the first time and they're experiencing your AI agent or chatbot? So let's take a case study. So Air Canada had a situation where they had someone who had a very unfortunate situation, and they were given the incorrect advice. The chatbot gave a refund when they shouldn't have. Now they're probably thinking that the chatbot was going to actually help the person. And so that chatbot was designed because it came outside of the query that the customer had. It didn't understand that query. So what then happened is then the actual AI gave information that was incorrect, which unfortunately left that grieving customer with an emotional situation, which was not good. But more importantly, what did it do to the brand? What it did to the brand is that it came out publicly. It came out that the AI was incorrect. It put more emotional stress onto the customer, and ultimately it harmed their reputation. So when we're thinking about AI agents and the whole experience of it, we've got to think about that case study that I just mentioned. We've got to think about how we're designing these experiences, because no brand wants any time that the actual AI chatbot goes off and does something that can hurt their reputation. So when we're looking at the whole experience, we've got to start with connection over speed. A lot of the times people are starting to put in generative AI or emerging AI into their tech stack or into their current customer experiences because they want that quick speed. Let me get those customers, let me get those answers, let me get their answers quickly, or handle and resolve quickly. But it doesn't necessarily mean that is what the customer wants. So we've got 71% in certain reports are saying that AI empathy is more important. So if you put it back to when you would experience, because you're a customer yourself, when you're trying to get through to a certain department and you have to go through an AI agent or a chatbot, and it's not like going back to say what I said, which is not exactly what the options have been given, it can be very frustrating. And so it is so important that when you think about it, the actual, what the client and the customers are asking for is they want AI empathy. They also want the tone and emotion to feel as if they could understand them and where they are in that cycle. So if they're having a problem and they're not getting the answers back, how do you do that in the rule-based? How do you do that in the logic-based? Because it's static and rigid. However, if you're using generative AI and you're using more conversational AI, is it going to understand empathy when the situation that, or the query that they're asking is not good for the client? And will they have the emotional intelligence with built into the AI to address that? So the expectation now is that empathy should be in the heart of AI. So let's look at a case study where we can see that AI is actually getting, or companies are leading and they're starting to get that right with the customer experience. So for one example, we've got H&M. So H&M very quietly went and produced a customer service assistant. And this was very much a case of looking at how it will go back to the customer. So they really took it back to where is the customer? How is the customer feeling? So when they designed their customer service assistant, they looked at the full cycle of the customer. They looked at the data that they previously had and certain submissions of tickets, and they made sure that when they designed the AI, they did not just give them answers. So an FAQ is typically what you will see. Go and look at our FAQ, or you'll be directed to links in FAQ. They looked at it in a conversational manner. That's the power of what you can offer it not when you use conversational AI like generative AI. It can suggest what so their assistant can suggest what they think they need by using elements of agentic AI to look at what types of what the intent is and what the customer wants, and it will adapt continuously, always thinking about the customer. So the prompts that they will be using behind that technology will always at the human center. It will always be looking at what should I be giving to the customer, not what I think the customer should have. So when we're looking at building empathy into CX, empathy isn't a cherry on the top. And I like that because a lot of people see it as an afterthought when they're thinking about AI. They're not thinking about AI where you're mapping the entire emotional journey, just like how you would do when you think about the customer experience, when you're thinking about the way that they will interact with your product or your service. It's the same way when you map it in the actual experience that they have with the AI chatbot. You've got to think about, like I said before, all of those touch points, when they're angry, when they're sad, when they're happy, when they're confused, those steps are so important. But it's also to design for distress, building around that, going back to it again, how important it is to build around not when a client is or a customer is happy and it's all going well, but what are you designing? How are you designing when the customer experience is not going right? And most importantly, looking at those different types of options that you might need to give them. So building the empathy is part of your blueprint. Now, why that's important is because when you do it right, there's a lot of reward. But when you're adding just generative AI, because you've heard the trends and you've heard other companies like H&M building it into the CX, it's easy just to say, we're just going to take our custom chatbots now and we're going to add some generative AI. It's going to be an amazing experience. It's not as easy as that. You have to look at this as completely different experiences. My time when I worked with building chatbots, building voice bots in the finance and very highly regulated industries, the way people interact through those experiences are not, like you said, logical. They're not rule-based, they're emotional. So when I started looking at designing going from the web, the voice flows, the IBM Watsons, the different forms of technology, and looking at that standard NLP, natural language processing, and the technology stack, it started to see very quickly as we started to integrate generative AI that doesn't work like that. Generative AI is a completely new subset of conversational AI, and it needs to be designed separately and differently. So you need to look at this as a complete redesign. Gen AI needs complete foundations. When I started to put the generative AI into the tech stack in 2021, we started very much quickly seeing that it operates differently. And the systems that those legacy systems were not operating as well with the new AI. So we were getting very poor customer experiences. So what's in the new AI tech stack? Agentic AI has multiple layers, and you can see here I put on some of those layers just for you to get an idea. There are multiple layers that go into agentic agents and building very exceptional agents that really give that good customer experience. Most of the time, you will find that you hear about RAG technology, retrieval augmented generative technology, which is a way to kind of take your data, extract your data, and let the AI give back the information on that. That is part of the tech stack. In an agent tech stack, you need to have multiple things in order to ensure that you're giving a good experience, and the agent is fully adept at being able to understand what the actual customer needs. So where we look at the new tech stack and we look at that, the agents and the frameworks, is very important to think about it from the beginning. So the beginning comes a part of the empathy. A lot of the time, empathy is left at the end. Like I said before, it's an afterthought. Normally what we've seen, and especially my time as being a consultant as well as an AI developer, is that people put out chatbots and put out AI assistants, and then it's after everything's going wrong that they say, oh, I think we need to add some guardrails, some frameworks, maybe some feedback, and it's always seen afterwards. When you're dealing with emerging tech, and especially with the new version of generative AI, you want to look at this as you need to build it into the core of your tech stack. So like you said, completely fresh, feedback loops. There's no mistake why you have a thumbs up and a thumbs down. When you even look at the likes of ChatGPT or any kind of chatbot provider, they have that because it tells the customer, tells you as the provider how the feedback is going. So that's ways for you as a CX to understand what the interaction is. Escalation, so making sure that the agent knows, I'm not handling this well, the emotional sentiment from the customer's interaction, needs to have a human come on board, and it knows when to triage it. So it's very much a case of looking at the filters as well, the guardrails. When certain customers are speaking, are there things that you need to pick up or not provide? Because the AI will generate what it thinks it needs to generate. It might not necessarily follow rules, as we saw with the Air Canada. Measuring success in ROI, how to do that. The most important thing when you're integrating generative AI, there are ways to do to see if there's real value. And some of the ways that you can look at that, again, going back to it, is the feedback loops, the CSAT scores, having those embedded in the experience and the journey of the customer is so important, because before you hand it off to the human agent, you want to get that feedback in the loop. So building that in your design and the flow and the architecture of how the experiences work from when the customer comes in and starts speaking to your AI agent to handling off is so critical, because that feedback helps you as a CX professional to see how the real journey is for that and for your customers. You've also got to look at the reduced and how many times was it reduced by the escalations to the human agent? How many times did the actual agent handle the query or the problem, and how many times did the actual the customer say, I don't like this, I want to go and speak to a human? That's another good sign to measure your success in ROI. And most importantly, the accuracy, looking at the way that you can get the transparency in the back end, so the actual responses that are coming out of the AI is critical. So it's transparent. So when you're building an AI agent, you need to be able to have those copies of those responses so that you can use that data to see how well the actual AI agent is handling the cases or where they're not. That helps with the training of the agent, training of the model if you have one, or actually fine-tuning the filters and the guardrails and the frameworks. So what does this all mean in a nutshell? We got to think about this. It's not a refit. Refits are great, but when you try to do the refit, it may not give the full CX experience. People are trying to do that. They're trying to put the AI into a process that they have and not fully getting it. And that comes with some great areas because you can combine some of the things that you want to do and slowly introduce the generative AI. However, if you want a true experience of what the power of generative AI can give your CX, you need to think about reimagining it. You've got to think about empathy at the beginning, thinking about your customer first, then building the architecture, like I said, around the frameworks, the guardrails, all of those different things that you need to look at when it comes to the customer coming in, engaging with your agent. And then again, that will help to build a proactive and helpful AI assistant. I'd like to think about this as a quick quote for you to remember. Your AI agents aren't just answering questions, they will shape how people feel about your brand. So when you're thinking about AI agents and thinking about even entering into it, it's so important that you put that customer first and test it out as if it's you. The testing stages I feel that I've seen from many, many times that I've looked at AI agents and tested them myself, I have felt that the experience has been an afterthought. And that is not something that you can do when you're looking at using emerging AI. So to wrap this up, things to remember. It's not just what they ask, it's about how your customers feel. Conversations leave impressions. So when you're really looking at the design aspect, you have to ask yourself a question, is my AI agent handling, not just when it's the perfect ideal query, is it handling and how is it handling when it's outside of that pattern? So what I like to do is always build when, and first of all, thinking when it's going wrong, answering all the questions that go wrong first, then look at when the actual customer journey is going right. Partner with conversational AI experts. And the reason why I say that is because they already had the experience before this new AI came in. It's new, it's still AI, but they have an understanding of how the logic goes behind putting together good customer experiences. So as a CX professional, if you're not technologist, partner with a conversational AI expert who has years of doing that, and then they have the experience of building out customer experience agents in the more newer form of technology, which is generative AI. So I'm Ashlea Atigolo, and thank you so much for listening to me today.
Ashley, thank you so much for a fantastic presentation. We've got time for a couple of questions, and I can see that we've got a couple in the chat. So Dibabrata asked, how do you balance the need for automation with maintaining a human element in financial services? Great question.
Yeah, that is a good question. So with us, with what we do, because obviously we're a very highly regulated situation, we've got to make sure that we think about the customer first. I think most of the time, and why I'm pausing on this, because half the time I see when I'm looking at the agents that are out there, especially in regulated industries, they haven't put the customer first. And I think it's one of those things that going back to the time when you're thinking about even doing a shopping role in the supermarket part-time, is all about that cliche statement, put the customer first. So balancing it is about, first, let me see what this is going to do with my client or my customer. How are they going to feel? Second, if I automate this process, how are the actual employees or the people behind that going to feel as well? Start with the emotional side. And the reason why it's important is because there is going to be some changes. When you look at the automation, certain things need to be automated, yes, but when it comes to complex answers, for instance, it could be emotional, the AI agent has to understand when to pass it on to a human, because at this time, that's where the human benefit comes in. So where we look at the automation is, these are very basic questions that do not need a human, and they're not as complex, and it could be answered by AI. But when it starts to go into complex questions, your agent should be able to then pass it off to the human agent.
Yeah, thank you so much. I totally agree with that. It really chimes with what I hear from my conversations with end users as well. So the second question that we have in the Q&A box, also from Debabrata, thank you again, Debabrata. What challenges have you faced in pioneering agentic AI systems, and how did you overcome them? What a great question.
It's a very good question. We have been doing a lot of mitigation because we're in the financial industry. So it's a lot of mitigating the risk. So just to take you back again, I briefly explained it. We're talking about from 2019, really looking at how to use conversational AI. And when it's not rule-based, which is what we're used to, we can say to the customer, you can only pick these buttons. That's fine. But as soon as you start doing natural language, so anything they want to ask, that's where you have the difficulties, and that's where we had to mitigate them. So it's the same thing you hear: the hallucinations, the inaccuracies, the biases. I can keep going on, but there's so many articles out there that say it, and everyone's probably heard this multiple times. How we had to mitigate them is looking at them one by one. So if you're looking at hallucinations, what do you need to do to ensure that hallucination doesn't affect your customer? Now, to do that, there are different technologies. So like going back to the tech stack, one of them could be using RAG technology. So it's actually using your data, and then the agent will extract that information, and the agent knows, I can only speak about this document. What's on this document is the only thing I can say. So that starts to reduce down some of those inaccuracies and some of those hallucinations. However, doesn't mean it's the only thing, going back to what he said. So you've got to look at it being that it's one of the tech stacks, because sometimes it still hallucinates. So therefore, you've got to, with the agent, think about the framework. The architectural layer of an agent is really looking at all of those problems that you have, and then inside that tech stack, having a filter, a process, a framework that combats each and every one. So if you're looking at it as a full, the client comes in, customer comes in, every step of the way requires you to look at a filter, a framework, before it loops back round again to come back with the output to the customer. So each section, so hallucinations, biases, all have to be looked at separately. And that's where the skill and the talent comes into it.
Thank you so much, Ashley. And that brings us very neatly up to the top of the hour. So I want to just thank all of our audience for attending today. And Ashley, thanks so much for joining us. It's been fantastic. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.